you just came back from Florida, from an event down there, protesting the attempts to ban Black history from classrooms in Florida. Do you have a message for DeSantis and others who are trying to control that curriculum?
Well, I think that if we are to have the country to become the nation that it proposes to be, we need to know everybody's history. And we need to celebrate everybody's history and not censor it. And what the governor is trying to do there, Governor DeSantis, is he's trying to use a cultural war to run for president. Us against them. I'm going to do this to the LGBTQ community. I'm going to do this with women's rights. I'm going to fly migrants out of Florida and send them to Martha's Vineyard. I'm going to decide what makes whites uncomfortable in Black history. Rather than saying the more we learn about the truth about all of us, it brings us all together. It's supposed to be the United States. But he thinks because his mentor and political daddy, Donald Trump, used race to go into politics, because don't forget, Donald Trump started with birtherism, that Obama was not one of us. He's trying to use the race wedge, so baby Trump, that you call DeSantis, is trying to use Black History Month to go and run for president. And some of us are saying that our history is too important to us to let that happen.
You learn to love America by learning the truth. The good, indifferent, and bad.
I just want to read the text again of what Florida is now requiring for middle school students. It says instruction should include, quote, how slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their own personal benefit.
How can it be for your personal benefit when you're treated as an enslaved person? It's not like, oh, I'm a blacksmith. Okay, I'm going to put a shingle out there and I'm going to be a blacksmith. You were owned by Mazza. If you're talking about the history of this country, United States of America, how can you just like a pun, white out enslavement? How can you do that?
Right here in Florida, they plan to teach students that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, in an attempt to divide and distract our nation with unnecessary debates. And I will tell you, there is no round table, no lecture, no invitation we will accept to debate an undeniable fact. There were no redeeming qualities of slavery.
I'm sure a lot of you already know that Florida has set a curriculum that would teach middle schoolers that enslaved Africans were taught skills that they could apply for their personal benefit. And I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody that this is bad. It's infuriating and insulting and gaslighting. And the thing that I find most chilling is that if you teach children that the enslaved benefited from their enslavement, and you make the enslavers out to be the benefactors, you open the door to justifying and perpetuating slavery. And if anybody thinks that sounds extreme and far-fetched, that it opens the door to allowing this to happen again, remember that 20 states still allow for slavery and forced labor as criminal punishment. And Florida being one of those states and being very anti-immigration, and we know how law enforcement and the prison system disproportionately discriminates against Black people, what's better than paying low wages to immigrants, paying absolutely nothing for the enslaved labor of incarcerated people? And also, I hope this puts Asian Americans on notice for what kind of Florida-mandated AAPI history curriculum we can expect coming down the pike.
He has created the environment that has led to this. What they say is that the updated standards now say that enslaved people develop skills that could be applied for their personal benefit. Slavery was the darkest moment of American history, our biggest shame. People got torn from their homelands. Men, women, newborns, put in the bowels of ships, shackled, made to row from Africa to America, then brought here and sold off like chattel, separated from their children, beat, whipped, worked to death, raped. How dare you? Shame on you people in Florida. How dare you try to whitewash slavery? And to the Commissioner of Education in Florida, Manny Diaz, a Cuban American, that is like saying that there's a redeeming quality to Cuban political prisoners under Castro. Yeah. When you don't have freedom, you don't have anything. And for this man, Ron DeSantis, who's apparently his only skill that he has acquired is lying and creating culture wars that he thinks are going to make him president, they're not, buddy. That's why you're 30 points down.
Well, and Anna hits it on the head there.
First of all, the Black History Month thing is frustrating because I don't know if anybody else is like this, but in my household, we talked about Black History Month every month. We didn't wait till February.
Oh, yeah.
That's the house I grew up in. My mom was like, I didn't go, man, I have a fun fact about Nina Simone, but damn it, it's November. I didn't do that. So I'd really love to tell you about Mae Jemison, but it's already March. So people who talk about Black history don't care about whether or not the country declares this Black History Month or not. And I mean, you know, we both are on the board of Donors Choose, helping teachers raise money for classes. Yeah. I don't see you at the meetings. Why don't you show up to the meetings, Steve?
Yeah, because I have private meetings.
Okay, good.
Yes.
But like, you know, Donors Choose, like teachers who are teaching Black History Month need to be empowered to do that. And that's why I work with Donors Choose. And we can't, and they're not going to not teach it because Trump says anything. The sad part is the people who need Black history the most are the ones who are tearing apart DEI because they don't know anything about Black history. And let's be clear, Black history, quiet as it's kept, is American history. It is not a separate function of history.
Because of course, the Christian lumberjack with a toupee would say this.
Kind of African American history or studies, that should not be a course that is offered or presented in grade school and public schools. It shouldn't be there at all.
Because...
And why is that? Because what we should be teaching kids is American history.
Oh, fuck. This is a fucking joke, right? This is a fucking joke? Coming from someone who is fucking baby powder white, even I know that's fucking dumb. And right now, I'm gonna prove a point as to why African American history is important. Can you tell me who this is? Yeah, George Washington. Or this guy, Teddy Roosevelt. What about this gentleman? John Wayne? See, because you could name all three of those men without blinking. Can you tell me who invented the traffic light and the gas mask? That would be Garrett Morgan Sr. Who invented the first incandescent light bulb? That would be Lewis Latimer. Who was the first black man to serve in the House of Representatives? And was also the second black man to serve in Congress? Yeah, that'd be Joseph Rainey. Also, fun fact, he was born a slave. From slave at birth to House of Representatives and Congress. And yes, while we all may know about Ruby Bridges, do you know what happened during the first year of school? See, because white parents were threatened by a black child coming to school, she had a singular teacher that came from out of state named Mrs. Henry who taught her the entire year. She had to eat lunch by herself. She had to be taught by herself. She had to have recess by her fucking self because white parents had a fucking fit and she wound up with PTSD from it. So we talked about black inventors and politicians. What about the Oscars? See, because the Oscars started going on in 1929. That was when the first award was, and it was televised in 1953. Can you tell me the first black actress to win an Oscar? 2002, Halle fucking Berry. That is 73 fucking years. It took 73 fucking years for a black woman to win Best Actress. And she's the only one to win Best Actress ever. And these are just the tip of the iceberg. This is basic facts that a fucking elementary school kid should know. The absolute caucasity of that fucking statement is so fucking riddled with white privilege, it's stupid. Because I guarantee most people didn't know who the fuck any of those people were. But in 3 minutes time of teaching, you know. The more you know.
People in America were hung from trees, and some were slowly burned alive, and school children were let out on their lunch break to watch. And observers took fingers and toes as souvenirs. This is history. This is not black history. This is not white history. It is American history. It is our history. Now, white people, you and I do not need to feel responsible for what happened, even if our direct ancestors did it. That is their responsibility, and they are dead. We cannot make amends for what they did. Most of them wouldn't want us to anyway. We do not need to apologize for their behavior. They did it. But let me ask you this. How do you feel when someone hides the truth from you because they think you'll cause problems if you find out? What if I told you that stories like these were kept from you as a white person so that you wouldn't get emotional, so that you wouldn't cause trouble? Your black neighbors already know these stories. If they weren't told in their own schools, they heard it from their parents or their grandparents or their neighbors. You weren't told because they wanted to keep you quiet. How does that make you feel? We are not responsible for what all those dead people did. We should be disgusted, but we're not responsible for it. What we should be furious about is that the truth was edited out of our history books to make us too comfortable to object to what was done, especially in our white schools that were supposed to be so much better. They didn't teach us the truth about racism in America because they didn't want us to do anything about it. They didn't want us to protest or vote for change, because while plenty of white people are racist as hell, the people in power knew that some of us would ask too many questions and make too much noise. So they fed us the lie that slavery ended with the Civil War, that reparations were handled, that the civil rights movement tied it all up with a pretty bow. They told us not to worry our pretty little heads about it. And then they said that today's black people are just ungrateful. Look at all this great country has given them, and this is how they repay us? We are not responsible for what anyone did 60 years ago. But America, we are responsible for making sure everyone knows what the fuck they did. We are responsible for telling the truth. White people have the right to be pissed off when the facts call for it. Shielding us from the facts so that we don't get upset should make us furious. I am pissed off. You can be pissed off too. You deserve the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. One share shows you care and refuse to be lied to.
Did you know there was actually a time where everybody wanted Black history? Don't look at me like that. I'm talking about Chicago from 1942 to 1945. Literally every single public school, grades 1 through 8, about 350 of them, required a mandatory Black Studies course designed by Black women. This is not your textbook history. In first grade, you learned about the Black Pullman porters, police officers, and artists. In second grade, you learned about Black scientists. By third grade, you knew about West African empires. And by middle school, you were looking at slave insurrections. Black and white kids were learning this. In Chicago with segregated public schools. Let me break it down. So it was World War II. The U.S. was fighting the Nazis. And they wanted to pretend like they didn't share a lot of ideas with them. So our governments had an interest in unifying the country. I mean, because America claimed it was fighting for democratic ideals abroad, so they need to do it at home. So that's when Madeline Morgan, the woman who made the curriculum, argued that it would help white people not be racist, that it would foster racial unity, and it would therefore instill democratic ideals. Boy, they ate it up. Everybody wanted the curriculum. I mean, school districts from around the country were begging for it. And then the war ended. The state made the class optional rather than mandatory. We weren't fighting Nazis anymore. We were letting them into the country. We didn't have to pretend to be racially intolerant. They really didn't need people to be unified because they didn't need your body or your money for war. And just like that, poof, Black history disappeared for the public schools.
The African American was an African, and as Malcolm said, is essentially an African all the way, right? But it's because of that conditioning. The European is a master in divide and rule. The European made sure that the African who was brought here, his culture was destroyed, his language was destroyed, his spirituality was destroyed. Everything that would connect him to Africa was destroyed. Destroyed to the extent that now you can actually convince some sisters and brothers that you have no connection with those Africans on the continent because they, quote unquote, sold you after all. So I hope this puts it in some sort of context. There is a short video on YouTube, actually it's an audio by Malcolm X. And Malcolm spoke about this a lot, actually, by the way.
Florida standards teach students that some black people benefited from slavery because it taught useful skills. The standard even cites some people they say are examples of blacks who actually benefited from enslavement.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Freedom Room, the channel where we discuss today's biggest stories with fact, context and balanced development. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our discussions. Today's topic has sparked one of the biggest debates in American education over the last few years. It centers on Florida's Black History curriculum and the question of how slavery and American history should be taught in schools. Some people believe the new standards encourage students to look at history from different perspectives. Others argue that they distort one of the darkest chapters in American history. This debate has divided politicians, teachers, historians, parents, and students across the country. It raises important questions about education, race, history, and how future generations should learn about American past. Before we break everything down, watch these clips carefully, pay attention to the different opinions being expressed. After the clips, I will return to explain this debate in really about with why it matters to every American.
The image behind me. This image is the truth of our country's history that our students are denied. This is what lynching in America, this is what it looks like. What we must remember is that for every black person they hung from a tree, dozens of white people came to celebrate. When our students don't learn about these lynchings in school, it's not to just deny us our justice. It's because racist policymakers don't want white children to know that that may be great-grandpa, smiling in the picture and pointing up at our ancestors, dangling as strange fruit. This is the truth about our country that too many racist lawmakers want to prevent our students from learning. So to young white people across our country, this is your history. The atrocities perpetuated against black people for generations were committed by your ancestors. Not all of you, but many of you. So you have to know this is American history. So what will you do to help repair the damage? What will you do to help us achieve reparations for the harm done? And if your history books do not teach this history, question the book. Talk to your school district. Tell them that we don't want a whitewashed history. We want and deserve the truth.
You're saying black people were here in America prior to the slave ships coming here.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, talk to me.
There's a great book on that. They Came Before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima. Von Woot now
Indians.
Black Native Americans. But again, you had travelers coming over here.
Right.
We knew how to sail. We had ships. They looked at some of these Native American tribes and saw that they have Hebrew languages in some of their native tongues.
Yeah, a good book is Lost Tribes in Promised Land, where they actually spoke Hebrew. And they knew what tribe they came from as far as being Israelites. And just to add, most people think the transatlantic slave trade started from Africa to America, but it started from America to Spain first, just to back up what you're saying. They took the Taino Indians first. They took 1,100 Taino Indians as a trial run. And out of that 1,100, 300 survived. And you know what they said? That's good business. And make sure your phone's on me. They said that's good business. And that became how the transatlantic slave trade started.
They was losing
800.
Damn.
Just remember, back then it was like a year and a half voyage or something like that to go along that. And
wait. You telling me the first slave trade didn't come from Africa to America? It went from America to Spain.
And then they circled back around. Spain, the Spanish word for black is Negro. All right. So they started using the word Negro as a pejorative. When they brought him over here, the word Negro somehow flipped into nigger. It got shortened to nigger. And again, they had to dehumanize and use these terms as pejoratives for black people. Then it became a negative thing. There is no real definition to the word nigger. All right. That's the trick bag. That's why it flips people out so much, because when you label somebody something and you can't really define it, it throws them off. The word nigger has zero definition. Nobody can explain why it's negative. They say it's an ignorant person.
There you go. That's what I hear.
Right,
Ignorant
right.
person.
But why, they're ignorant white people. How come they're not called niggas? You see? Nigger is a word that they throw at us, and when you can't define it, you put power on it. For example, critical race theory. That's a powerful thing they use in politics now. There's no definition to critical race theory at all. It's whatever they say it means at the moment. So whenever they put a name or title on somebody without any definition, they can control you. This is why it's important for us to control our culture, identify who we are and what our culture is, without letting them label us.
Which is why I broke that word nigger down to show it's even used in the Bible, but it wasn't used in a derogatory sense, to back up what he's saying. It wasn't a negative connotation as to how it is now. It's only a negative connotation now because of the stigma to whom they applying it to. So it's supposed to be the nigger is slow, the nigger's not intelligent, the nigger can't do this. But when I look at our history, 40 years removed from slavery, building the greatest civilized cities during the Great Depression. During the Great Depression in America, you got Black Wall Street, you got Seneca Village, you got Paradise in Detroit, you got all these cities that allowed to flourish. So when you say we're slow and stupid and we're unintelligent, it doesn't match up historically. HBCUs, historical black colleges, are black men and women that were able to build colleges during a time where we were supposed to be unintelligent. So we talking about the word nigger. I like how you said there's no definition of that word.
Every time I bring up slavery, somebody jumps out of the shadows like, did you know black people owned slaves too? Like, that's supposed to stop the conversation. Like, that's the gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about it. The first recorded black slave owner in the American colonies was a man named Anthony Johnson. He was taken from Angola in the early 1600s, survived indentured servitude in Virginia, gained his freedom, and eventually owned land, over 250 acres. That's wild considering the time, right? But here's where it gets twisted. In 1654, Johnson went to court to claim that another black man, John Casser, owed him a lifetime of labor. And the court sided with him. And just like that, chattel slavery was legally extended. Not by a white man, but by a free black man. This is the part that people love to throw in your face without a shred of historical nuance. So yeah, Anthony Johnson was the first. And yes, over time, some other free black people, especially in places like New Orleans and Charleston, they owned and enslaved people too. Sometimes to protect family members from the system, sometimes to gain wealth and proximity to power. And no, hell no, I'm not excusing it. It was betrayal, it was cruel, it was wrong. But I'm also not going to sit here and let you pretend that that canceled out 400 years of white-led genocide. Because here's what you're not going to do. You're not going to erase the fact that 98% of enslaved people were owned, traded, insured, and brutalized by white people. You're not going to pretend that black people created the boats, the laws, the markets, and the damn system itself. Black participation was a stain, but white supremacy was the blueprint. And let me give you one more twist to that Anthony Johnson story. After he died, Virginia snatched that land back from his family. They claimed that black people couldn't be citizens. So miss me with that fantasy that owning people bought him safety. The very system that he tried to participate in turned around and ate him whole. So yeah, some black people tried to mimic the master. But that doesn't make them the architects. It makes them proof of how poisonous that system really was. They weren't trying to build freedom. They were trying not to drown. And in doing so, they passed the chains on. We don't hide the truth over here. But we damn sure won't let you weaponize it either.
Well, it's the first day of Black History Month, and I still don't understand why we even have to have a Black History Month. Well, this might be a reason why. This is Abraham Galloway, a North Carolina and a national hero, and I'm from North Carolina, so I'm always going to represent it to the fullest, but I didn't even learn about this guy growing up. This is his story. Abraham Galloway is from Wilmington, North Carolina, and he was born into slavery, but at age 20, he and another slave, Richard Eden, stowed away in the bottom of one of the ships leaving the port with the tar and turpentine and almost died making it to Philly and eventually making it to Canada. Then it wasn't enough for him to save himself. He wanted to go back to Wilmington and save his mother and save the other black folks in his community. So he became a spy for the Union Army. Eventually, he started recruiting for the Union, but when they asked him to help build black troops so they could win the war, he said, sure, I'll do it if you give us equal pay to the white recruits, our wives' jobs, open schools for our kids, and provisions for our families. And they're like, okay, we can do that. And the next day, he had 4,000 black troops at the Cape Fear River. And his influence started to grow in the black community and even in the white community. Why? Because he was an incredible storyteller and speaker, and he could captivate people and motivate people and make them passionate about the cause. One of those people was President Abraham Lincoln, when he and a few others went to the White House, went in the front door and argued for black suffrage, for the right to vote, but not with restrictions like they were trying to say, like they had to be a property owner, or they had to be able to read and write, but with no restrictions, the ability to vote. And he ended up winning that in North Carolina. Eventually, he became a state senator from North Carolina. And at the 1868 Constitutional Convention, when they were rewriting the North Carolina Constitution, he said, I came here to help the poor white man as well as the colored man and do justice to all men. He fought for everybody. Sadly, he died at age 33. And there were over 6,000 people at his funeral, which I think is still the record for the biggest funeral in the history of Wilmington, North Carolina. He was a hero, and he was from my state, and he helped change the trajectory of the war. So he's a national hero. And we all learned the big stories growing up in history class, but it's these small stories that really made the big change. Hope this helps.
When we teach our students in 7th grade about Texas history, there is not one black person within the curriculum. So think about the distance of saying, hey, we're going to teach you about General Santa Anna and Davy Crockett and all these individuals. Right. And then we're going to tell you about Juneteenth. So for me, there is an erasure in a big distance that's been going on since before. I'm talking about Daughters of Confederacy, when we started throwing up these monuments in the 1960s, where me as a black parent and also somebody as a product of public education here in Texas is just thinking specifically, before we get to question nationalism, we already had a structural issue within the curriculum that goes in maybe back to the beginning of Texas. So just thinking just from that standpoint. Absolutely. You know, I know I'm talking a lot, but I want to make sure that you understand specifically what I'm asking and understand the issue has been going on in the curriculum for decades.
And this history needs to reflect all of us. If little kids can't see in their history that people who are other than white men can achieve great things, then why would they believe in themselves, right?
Definitely.
And so it is important. History is important.
Very important.
Real history is important for all sorts of reasons. One, for us to understand and appreciate who we are.
In 1870, just 5 years after the Civil War, a school called the Preparatory High School for Colored Youth opened in Washington, D.C. It became the first public high school for black students in the United States. Now, the school started in the basement of 15th Street Presbyterian Church. That's what was available, and they made it work. The school was made possible by William Syphax, the first president of D.C.'s Board of Trustees for Colored Schools, which was established in 1868. He fought for this school to exist and for black students to receive the same education as their white peers. By the 1890s, the school had a staff full of black scholars. One of them was Anna Julia Cooper, who later became the principal. In 1925, she became one of the first black women in U.S. history to earn a PhD. And most black schools were underfunded and overcrowded. This school here taught Latin, calculus, literature, and science. And colleges around the country took notice too, including Ivy League schools. And they actively recruited from this school, even during segregation. Now, the school was renamed M Street High School in 1891 and Dunbar High School in 1916. This was in honor of the poet Paul Laurence Dunbar. This facility right behind me opened in 2013, but make no mistake, it's more than just a school building. This is a monument of what happens when students are believed in, invested in, and expected to lead. Dunbar High School, the first public high school for black students in the United States of America, right here in the nation's capital. How's that for some black history?
Do not, for the love of God, tell kids that slavery was beneficial, because I can guarantee you it most certainly was not. Thank you.
Education and civil rights advocates are slamming new Black history teaching standards in Florida. Under the new rules, middle school teachers must now include lessons, quote, how slaves developed skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit.
It's inaccurate. It's ahistorical. Critics are calling this a big step backwards and saying it's a disservice to Florida students because they're not going to learn the full truth and the full accurate truth of American history.
This is not a made-up story about Florida. The Florida State Board of Education approved new standards to teach African American history that will now teach public school students that Black people benefited from slavery because it taught them skills. And that's not the only change that people are objecting to. In high school, for example, teachers are going to tell students about the acts of violence perpetrated by African Americans in a massacre in 1920 where a mob of white people massacred at least 30 Black people. Now, there was over an hour of public commentary where the majority of the speakers were opposed, but the board unanimously approved this. When you think that things in Florida education are bad, Florida finds a way to go even lower.
Ron DeSantis just sent a letter to Kamala Harris requesting a meeting to discuss Florida's new Black history curriculum. DeSantis said he would bring along William Allen, who helped write the curriculum. Who is William Allen? We took a deep dive, and it's a wild ride. Allen has a history of making incendiary remarks and promoting right-wing ideology. In 1989, as chairman of Reagan's Civil Rights Commission, Allen gave a talk at an anti-gay conference titled Blacks, Animals, Homosexuals, What is a Minority? In the speech, Allen said that creating legal protections for minority groups, quote, is the beginning of evil of reducing American Blacks to an equality with animals and then seducing other groups to seek the same charitable treatment. At the time, the rest of the commission denounced the speech for being disgusting and unnecessarily inflammatory. When the commission held a vote to condemn the speech, Allen was the only member to vote on behalf of himself. Allen was also charged with kidnapping a 14-year-old girl from a reservation. There was a custody battle between her birth mother and a white couple who wanted to adopt her. Quote, Allen contends that the girl wants to leave the reservation, though the mother has formal custody. Following pressure from the commission, Allen eventually apologized. But even then, he said he would not assume responsibility for the events. He also refused to step down, and instead called for the resignation of everyone on the commission. More recently, Allen has been an outspoken critic of efforts to promote diversity. Accepting the, quote, whole idea of diversity and identity, Allen says, is apartheid. There is a lot more on Allen and other members of his work group that created the Florida's new Black history curriculum in today's popular information.
We have some really big news right now. Florida students are giving up their Saturdays to learn Black history that their schools will not teach them. Faith in Florida, an organization in Florida, has now developed its own African American history curriculum. And more than 400 congregations in the state are
Welcome back. The controversy began in 2023 when Florida introduced a new Black history standard. The debate focused on a section saying enslaved people develop skills that in some cases could later benefit them. Critics argue that these wordings could minimize the suffering of enslaved Africans who experienced forced labor, violence, and the loss of basic human rights. They believe slavery should be taught primarily as a system of oppression. Supporters defended the standards, saying they were not praising slavery but highlighting the resilience of enslaved people who gained skills and later used them to rebuild their lives after freedom. The issue quickly became political, with leaders like President Biden and Vice President Harris criticizing the curriculum, while Governor Ron DeSantis defended it, saying critics misunderstood the standard. Beyond politics, the debate raises a bigger question. How should Americans teach its history? By focusing only on the painful realities of the past, or by also recognizing the strength and achievement of those who survived it? Let me know in the comment section. Please continue to watch the video to the end. Like and subscribe. Thank you.
So there's this article going around about Black students in the state of Florida giving up their Saturdays in order to learn Black history, and I have some thoughts. Before I begin, I just want to say that this is dope. I applaud the students, I applaud the teachers, I applaud the families, I applaud the community, I applaud the facilitators, I applaud the organizers. I applaud everybody who has anything to do with this project and its success. It does not surprise me that Black people will find a way, will shift a way, will make a way, even when there appears to be no way. It does not surprise me that Black people will apply extra effort in order to make sure that our stories are told, our histories are respected and remembered. None of that surprises me. What frustrates me, though, is that we have to. It frustrates me that we still, in the year of our Lord 2024, have to fight just to tell our stories. That there was a point in this nation where enslaved Black folks weren't even allowed to learn to read. Fast forward to not so long later, and we're still having to fight to just be able to tell our own history. Like, what does it say about the people who are restricting this history? That they are way more comfortable restricting this history because their feelings get hurt when they listen to it. What fragile human beings. Rather than, I don't know, taking the lessons of history and progressing our culture forward, our society forward, they get upset because they see their grandmamas and grandpappies in the pictures. They get upset because they are no longer centered in these stories and these narratives. Because, newsflash, other people exist. And you can't call yourself the land of the free when you literally capitalize off of the enslavement of other people, off of human trafficking, off of normalized SA and routine dehumanization. Sorry if that hurts your little fragile, frosty feelings, but it's the truth. If we get to the bottom of it, these same folks who are blocking our history from being taught in schools aren't worried about Black people learning it. It's one thing to have those people out there that you don't even really see as people talk about what happened to them. It's a whole different thing when it's one of your kids, one of your grandkids, your niece, your nephew. Now they're looking at you funny because your pappy was in one of these pictures, because the way you told the story isn't the truth, isn't factual, and dismisses the humanity of an entire people. So they're not worried about us learning and talking about our own history. They're worried about their own kids. So I would encourage any parent, any non-Black parent who sees programs like this popping up, if you can, financially contribute to them, but also enroll your kid in them. Why should it only be Black kids learning about Black history? Share with the rest of your community, especially if you're so outraged to make a blue bracelet. Take that outrage over to these educational programs and fund them, support them, put your kids in them. It's not enough to wear your advocacy. You have to actually advocate.
And just in case anybody care, they're trying to take all Black history out of schools, and I think they are succeeding in this agenda. Just in case anybody wanted to know, and just in case anybody cared. So African American parents, start teaching your kids at home. Get a couple of books, teach them, because baby, the schools is sure not. And then what they was teaching in school was not accurate. Might I add, that's a whole nother discourse. But teach your kids at home, because they are not going to learn it at school. And the stuff that they're learning at school is not the full truth, not even by a long shot.
Florida. It's out with a new school curriculum, for African American history. And here are some of the new standards. First, students will be taught, quote, how slaves develop skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Students will be expected to identify famous African Americans like Rosa Parks, you see here, but won't be expected to know why these people are important or about their histories.
The true privilege is being able to learn the truth about our history. Like, privilege in this realm, it has nothing to do with dollars and cents or what college you went to. It's the ability to learn what truly happened without it being impeded by the scope of whatever political bias is happening. We're always trying to make sense out of nonsense, though, and this is nonsensical. It's because people aren't paying attention. You aren't paying attention when you're voting in your local elections, and then when things like this come up, everyone's like, are you bananas? Yeah.
Talk about the new curriculum that Governor DeSantis, presidential candidate DeSantis, is pushing, and that the teachers are forced to teach.
It is a disaster. It cannot be implemented. The state threw out some standards without connecting them to any courses, so teachers in Florida don't know how to implement this law. We are now in a confused, demoralized state of education in Florida. This man has, I think, done the most damage to education in this state than I could imagine. We're trying to figure out what to do next in order to have teachers not arrested for not implementing these standards. We're trying to get clarification from the Department of Education. They do not respond. So basically, it's just a mess in Florida. We're still trying to figure out how slaves had personal benefits when they were not even considered to be persons. They were property. How could a chair or a cow have personal benefits? This is what has enraged Black America, and a lot of white people as well. The very idea of trying to suggest or having teachers teach that enslaved people had some benefit from being enslaved. Even if the 1% of the enslaved who were freed had some marketable skill, what about the 99% who basically had no skills at all? What about the millions of slaves who died before emancipation? What personal benefit did they receive? What DeSantis is trying to do with this issue and others is to equip.
Welcome back. After hearing both sides of this debate, it is clear that teaching history is never easy. The words chosen in school standards matter because they shape how millions of young people understand the past. Perhaps one lesson from this controversy is that history should present the full picture. Students should learn about the unimaginable suffering caused by slavery, while also recognizing the extraordinary resilience, achievements, and contribution of African Americans before, during, and after emancipation. History should neither hide painful truth nor oversimplify complicated events. Instead, it should encourage students to think critically, examine evidence, and understand different perspectives while never losing sight of basic historical facts. It is your turn now to answer. Do you believe Florida's Black History curriculum provides a balanced education, or do you think it should be revised, and why? Leave your honest opinion in the comments below. Please keep the discussion respectful even if you disagree with others. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, to comment, to subscribe, and to share this video with others. Thank you for watching The Freedom Room. I truly appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next video. Please subscribe.